Okay, so this is our next episode of True Wrestling Fans Discussions. This episode is going to be on the Legion of Doom, aka the Road Warriors. I'm your host, Mike.
And I'm Frank, and let's get into
All
this.
right, let's
Oh,
go.
what a rush this documentary
Yep.
is going to be.
Yep.
Well, we're going to first cover their NWA run from 1986 up until their departure in 1990, and then following their next couple of WWE runs. Not their WCW run, just to make everybody clear. We're not doing their short little 6 months in WCW in 1996. I'll explain why they left there, but not covering that. Well, let's start with this. 1986, April 19th, 1986, they won the inaugural Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Tag Team Tournament Cup. And this was just as Jim Sr. had passed away and his son had taken over. So they did the Memorial Tag Team. And if anybody knows NWA, they always loved tag team stuff. They had the 6-man tag teams. They had tag team tournaments. It was an endless plethora of tag team things that they did. So they won the Memorial Cup by beating Ronnie Garvin and Magnum TA, which Magnum TA, he was an unfortunate with what happened to him. He could have been one of the big breakout stars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So they beat these two guys in a tournament, and this led to a rapid push, actually at the Great American Bash that year, where they feuded with the Koloffs. Now, this is one of their greatest feuds in the NWA was Ivan and Nikita Koloff. I mean, these guys just literally just beat the crap out of each other. And what was it? At Starrcade '86, they defeated the Midnight Express in what was known in WCW/NWA the scaffolding match.
Yeah, those were infamous.
Now, if anybody's not familiar with a scaffolding match, is you're on top of this big structure like they would at a construction site. And most of the time, the stipulation was you had to be thrown off to lose the match. This is something I would have thought ECW would have invented.
Yeah.
I mean, this was unheard of, and they had this match a bunch of times, and they won their tag belts at that. I believe at the Midnight Express.
Was that the one when Cornette blew his knees out, or was that another scaffolding?
Yes, that was the one.
Yeah.
That he said that put him out for a long time.
Yeah,
he landed both knees in that.
He landed wrong and he blew both knees out. Yeah.
Well, don't get involved.
Yeah.
But Cornette was infamous for it. So now we go to 1987, where they had the first ever War Games match, and I thought the invention of this was just genius. And I'm glad still, even if it's in NXT right now, that they still use the War Games.
Yeah, it was a
steel cage match.
Yeah.
And this one was at the Great American Bash, and it was the Road Warriors, Dusty Rhodes, and Nikita Koloff. And these guys back then were known for teaming together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was against the Four Horsemen, who at the time was Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Lex Luger. And so, I mean, this was one of the classic War Games matches, one of the best you'll ever see. The other one, I believe, that was the best that you'll see is in '89. So if anybody is ever on the network on Peacock, feel free to check it out if they've allowed it.
Right.
But those two were the best War Games matches you'll ever see. So, and then throughout, leading to Starrcade '87, which is their annual pay-per-view in November or December, just depending on the year, they had feuds with Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, former Brainbusters, now Four Horsemen members. And this was, again, another great feud that they had with these guys. They just, a lot of the matches they lost by DQ to these guys, so the Horsemen were kind of getting over on them.
Right.
But for the most part, even though they were still good matches.
Yeah.
And back then they had, like I said just a minute ago with the discussion of they love tag team, they had what was called the 6-man tag team titles. This lasted a few years. It wasn't really a big thing, but a lot of fans in the South with wrestling would know what I'm talking about as far as the 6-man titles. And even to this day, they would love to see that return. I mean, I could give it a go, but I really don't think it would work. I've always said an intergender tag team championship might be something they do, guy and a girl. You know, that is something that could be down the line. But in any event, they won the 6-man titles twice with teaming with Dusty Rhodes, who was their go-to guy. I mean, those guys just clicked together as a team. They had this is funny because this was right before both teams even wound up in WWE, and this is before even their feud with Demolition. The Powers of Pain were involved in a feud with the Legion of Doom in 1987. And it was actually what they called it a violent feud. I mean, this was just knock down, drag out, just brutality between these two. And it's funny because the Powers of Pain, when they realized what they were scheduled against with the Road Warriors, they left Jim Crockett Promotions and went to WWE after they found out they were in a series of the scaffolding matches with the Road Warriors, and they were like,
They didn't want to do it, yeah. But you know what was cool? That bench pressing thing, that contest that they had?
Yes.
Where then they got into that whole fight, and apparently they were using real weights. Like those guys had a lot of pride, and they really, really wanted to bench press as much as they really could. So
they were huge in the gym.
Yeah,
I mean,
they were.
You look at Powers of Pain and Road Warriors back then, and they were just like that. And imagine if the Powers of Pain were kept together through 1990 when they got to WWE, the Legion of Doom, what kind of feud maybe they even would have had.
Yeah.
But, either way, the scaffolding match wasn't on Warlord and Barbarian's repertoire, so they weren't goodbye.
They weren't interested, no.
Especially not only the match, but on they were going to be on the losing side of it, too. Yeah. So I guess they didn't want to be buried, but
so they jumped over to WWF. But the thing was, the Road Warriors had been kind of negotiating with Vince to get into WWF, but for whatever reason, the money wasn't right, or maybe the schedule, so they never ended up going over there at that point. Instead,
that's a shame.
Instead, they got the Powers of Pain.
Yeah, and look what happened there.
Yeah. So.
But in any event, and then eventually they get the Legion of Doom anyway.
Yeah.
But in any event, going into 1988 now in AWA, they actually turned heel now. And a team that looked like that and acted like that, I always wondered, were they ever heels? And as you go and back and watch the old NWA stuff, yeah, they were for a time, for about a year. And it was amazing that just the look that they had, they weren't heels at first. Like I get the fans really caught on.
The fans just loved them. That's they were just.
They didn't like them when they attacked the heart and soul of WCW.
Well, yeah, that's true.
They turned on Sting, and that's really the fans were like, "Wait a minute, we love him."
And they had turned on Dusty Rhodes too, right? Didn't they scratched him up in the face? Or was that later on?
No, that was actually that year, because what's funny is, and that's I'll bring that up in a second. What they did to Dusty, what they were responsible for.
That was bad. That was really bloody.
Yes, and WCW/NWA had, like WWE, they had the no blading, no blood policy, and I'll get to that in a second. They, as the heels now, they had won the tag team titles now in October of '88 against now the fan favorite Midnight Express.
Mm-hmm.
Cornette was always known for getting his boys to turn nonstop. Midnight Express were actually pretty good as a fan favorite. But we all know them as the heels that they were feuding with the Rock and Roll Express. Yeah. But now the Road Warriors were at a title defense at the top of their game as heels, because the fans were just literally booing them to no end. And now the Road Warriors were actually responsible. Now, if you remember back then, Dusty Rhodes was the head. He was the booker for the matches. Mm-hmm. He was responsible. He was pretty much the guy, the wrestler in charge, besides Jim Crockett or whoever else he had put in charge to oversee them. But Dusty Rhodes was the guy that booked the events and booked the matches. And so the Road Warriors were responsible for his termination. When they turned on him, if you guys remember, they pulled a spike off their outfit, their in-ring outfit. That's right. And they looked like they were gouging his eye out, but actually they busted him open. And Dusty got reamed for that because of the no blading policy. And also, if you go back and look at it now, you can see it was the start of Dusty's exit, because Animal had a match at what was it? Starrcade '88, where if he beat Dusty, they could pick their new 6-man tag team partner, and he actually beat him, and that allowed them to have, if anybody remembers, Tenryu. He was part of the demolition thing for a second when they beat him at WrestleMania 7. Right. Tenryu was actually named as their new tag team partner in the 6-man tag. And then shortly after Starrcade, Dusty was given his release. And then he showed up in WWE in 1989.
To go where?
Yeah, well, whatever. It was what it was. But just the whole way of getting him out, I thought that was pretty crappy.
Yeah.
They turned on him not only personally and professionally. It's just I didn't agree with that. Yeah. But eventually, shortly after, Tenryu was acknowledged as their 6-man tag champion partner, the titles were dissolved, and they were gone. There was no more. And I guess, after a while, just to me, like I said, it never clicked. I don't even know honestly if you could do it now. Probably not.
No.
So now in 1989, they've turned fan favorite now again because of their constant. The fans have just gotten into the brutality. They just love the way they are. The right. They had the right mentality, and
Yep.
again, now it just clicked with them. And in 1989, it was the year of the tag teams for them, in my opinion. They were always weak in that later going forward, but 1989 to me, they were just stockpiled, and the feuds were just phenomenal. And that was to me was one of their better years before WCW had made it official, still NWA.
Yeah.
They they lost the tag team titles actually to the Varsity Club with the two members of the Varsity Club, Mike Rotunda and Dr. Death Steve Williams. And the other two members of the Varsity Club were Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster, or the Game Master back then, as he was called, and Rick Steiner, because the Steiners weren't even together yet at the time. So these were the four guys, and it worked for about a year, but then they started to split up.
Yeah.
So, but they lost the titles on April 2nd, 1989. And what was funny about that match is, if everybody remembers now, Theodore Long, Teddy Long was actually a referee to start his career in NWA, and then later on to be a manager of Doom. And he fast counted this match. I mean, it was little 1, 2, 3. They lose the match, and he was actually fired by WCW for being a referee. But I think the plan was always for him to be a manager anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, he managed a couple of. I remember they had Woman managing Doom towards the end of '89, and it just wasn't clicking. And then to start '90, and then they brought Teddy Long in, and then that team it took off for them. They became the tag champions in a history feud with the Steiners and stuff. So Teddy Long to me was better manager, and then eventually a GM SmackDown. He was real good at that. So we're going forward now. They pretty much ended 1989 with feuds with the Samoan SWAT team, aka the Head Shrinkers, and the Skyscrapers, Sid Vicious and Dangerous Dan Spivey. So there were eventually three members of that. Everybody knows Mean Mark Calloway, aka the Undertaker, but Sid was never a partner with him. Mark Calloway was partnered with Spivey, but the original was Sid Vicious and Dangerous Dan Spivey, and I think they were good as a tag team, even though it was short lived. And their matches with the Road Warriors were pretty good, and the Samoan SWAT team was excellent. Like I said, plethora of tag teams back in 1989. I mean, it was just even the Freebirds had a feud with the Road Warriors for a second, and even that match was even good. And you can check out the War Games that year because the Freebirds were involved with the Road Warriors in that, and that to me was one of the best War Games matches ever.
The Road Warriors also traveled to Japan too during the '80s. They did a lot of work over in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And they were being very, very popular over there.
Oh, extremely.
They wrestled a lot over there.
They did a lot of work with New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Now, these weren't the only guys that left WCW as a result of this one individual. They left in 1990 thanks to the heat with Jim Herd.
Pizza Hut.
The Pizza Hut guy. And did it finally take for the whole thing with Flair leaving and the Road Warriors leaving and eventually Luger leaving to realize that this guy just can't do it? I mean, you just lost four of your top guys and you're still in charge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the deal here? But in any event, their loss was WWE's gain because they left WCW in June due to that. Shortly after, it was SummerSlam when they made their debut during the Hart Foundation Demolition match. I don't agree with their debut, how they did it, especially because I'm a Demolition fan. But I like the fact that they entered the WWE to get a shot, and now they were just strictly called the Legion of Doom.
Right, which was the name of their faction with their manager.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As a collective, they were right. As a collective, they were the Legion of Doom. And I think even Jake the Snake was part of Legion of Doom for like 2 seconds, like a few years before that, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very, very briefly, he was.
Thank God.
Yeah, so
I don't think it would have worked with him permanently.
But you know the only thing I didn't like, that they turned over the colors of the shoulder pads. I like the black shoulder pads with the metal spikes.
They even had the blue from time to time.
Yeah,
too.
Or the blue ones, they look really sharp. Now they had the red ones with it looked like rubber spikes.
It was
rubber, right?
Yeah, only because again WWE had the no blading policy.
Yeah,
and because what they were known for, what they did to Dusty Rhodes, I don't think they wanted something like that to happen again.
It was, I know, but
it was cartoony.
Yeah, it was a little
You
more
know,
kid friendly.
especially yeah, because if you actually bumped into that, you could see it kind of bend a little bit,
Right, right. Yeah,
but it
yeah,
still
yeah.
looked good on the
Oh, it
football
did, but
pads.
I just,
But I like the black better, like you
yeah, yeah,
said,
yeah. Wish
because
'em-
you know it made them.
Right.
But in any event, they made their official TV debut June 15th. However, their first pay per view debut was SummerSlam, and they cost Demolition the tag titles, and they started the feud with Demolition, which didn't go Demolition's way. Because by this point, Demolition's already got
That's
one
the
foot out the door, unfortunately. I mean, we've gone over that in the Demolition documentary. Everybody knows my feeling on it, and if you don't remember, go back and check it out. They were on a fast track as well when they got there because if you remember, they were on the fast track to the tag titles in 1991. Not so much they didn't get it. Granted the shot at WrestleMania 7 like they should have.
like they
They
should
got
have,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, they got it at SummerSlam at the Garden.
After a year,
Yeah, that was literally a year that they
literally a
were
year
in
since they
there.
got there.
And I think at first they tried to hold them back because they would be a tag team that if they came in, you would expect them to automatically be the number one contenders. And the babyface matchup wasn't heard of.
Yeah,
And of
so
course, in 1990, they had the whole debacle with the Rockers and the ring. You know, we've gone over that many times. So I think they kept them from being in that spot until they couldn't really hold them back anymore. So they gave them feuds like Power and Glory, Demolition, te- teams that they would stay on the mid card, even on the house show,
right.
until it was their time when they faced the Nasty Boys. And quite honestly, you know, I'm glad they won the tag titles. You know, they put on a great performance. I just against the Nasty Boys, no,
Yeah, I mean,
they just
yeah, I know what you're
I did.
saying.
It was just one. It was just the match that at SummerSlam '91. I didn't. I think it could have been better. I think that their opponents could have been better.
Could have been, but I mean, the crowd was really into it, and the Road Warrior pop is known throughout the industry. Like that pop that they got when that music hit.
As soon as you hear
Oh man,
what a rush!
yeah.
They're already on their feet.
And before that in NWA when they had the Iron Man,
Iron Man music,
Iron Man,
yes.
yeah. The pop was just incredible, man. Always blew the roof off the place as soon as they come out. It was legendary, you know.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
And the one good thing is the stipulation that they were able to get in at SummerSlam is, you know, the Nasty Boys, in order for them to keep the belts, they were known for getting themselves disqualified.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So the one thing Hawk and Animal went out and Superstars one day and said, "We'll face, you know, we're challenging you for at SummerSlam, but we want it to be a no disqualification
No.
match," and they got it. And the rest is history. They're off to the races. They're the tag team champions now, and the belts look really good on them, and they were well deserving.
Yeah,
Maybe a
absolutely.
little sooner in my book for
Yeah,
better
I
opponents,
would have
but
think, yeah.
again, we've covered that extensively. Now going into 1992, now we're having a little where they're having some issues. Not they in particular, but Road Warrior Hawk.
Yeah.
Now they lost the tag team titles on February 7th to Ted DiBiase and IRS, a put together team known as Money Inc., which really I don't even think was supposed to happen as quickly as it did. Because if you were me back then and you're watching Superstars and you see all of a sudden these two guys are managed by Jimmy Hart and they're the tag team champions, you're like, what just happened here? How did this happen? And the Road Warriors, if you remember, had briefly left, and I'm going to let you cover what the issues were with Hawk.
Yeah, well, Hawk was apparently a little bit out of control, and there was some signs about Hawk prior to that because they had a match with the Hart Foundation that was highly anticipated. It was at a house show, and apparently Hulk showed up inebriated, and the match didn't go over the way that it should have gone over. Now, fast forward to going into '92, they were supposed to hold on to the titles or rematch for the titles, but they end up getting suspended, or Hawk gets suspended. I guess it was some sort of a wellness policy, or it was a failed
In the
test.
beginning of '92,
Beginning of
yes.
'92, yeah. Otherwise, they would have been at WrestleMania 8 and
Where they
wrestling
originally should have been.
and wrestling, not
Not doing a an interview.
an interview. And they brought back Paul Ellering, which I guess Paul Ellering was there to babysit Hawk. I think they brought him
Yeah,
back.
because he was their manager in NWA,
Yeah.
and he pretty much kept them in line.
Hmm.
And he was the third member of the Road Warriors.
Right.
However, the way they did it, though, Hawk hated it. I mean, they brought out all of a sudden now they got a ventriloquist named Rocco.
Rocco. Yeah.
I mean, what? what is going on here? What was the reasoning behind this? You just totally just ruined this.
Uh-huh.
Now, coming out at SummerSlam '92 on the motorcycles with the long runway, I thought was badass.
Yeah, they had the gold plated
The
spikes, the pads.
gear,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Now having Rocco, now Bobby Heenan, I remember him saying the dummy's driving the bike
What?
because you see Rocco is strapped to Paul Ellering's motorcycle, and
Hmm.
I didn't like the whole ventriloquist thing.
It was
I
stupid.
mean,
It didn't fit the characters. It didn't make no sense. They wanted
from
to sell
the
toys. That's what it was. They wanted to sell. It was merchandising. That's
yes,
why.
from the word go, this was the dumbest thing I've ever
Yeah.
seen. And Paul Ellering's out there with this thing, and I'm like, no, you
And
can't do this.
Animal says he got rid of it at some point. After that, he tossed it somewhere. He was sick of it. Hawk hated it. Animal hated it. He
Matter of
tossed it.
fact, the second instance with the Legion of Doom of everything that escalated upon the departure in 1992 was Hawk utterly hated this gimmick, and they
Well,
were in.
he was also he already got it was I think it was another failed drug test or something. That's why they got punished and they were the opening match at
Yeah,
SummerSlam.
against Money Incorporated, something
Yeah.
that
So
was being built up now for 6 months should be a
yeah.
mid Carter.
So they get punished and apparently he was supposed to serve some sort of a suspension after that. But then Hawk
And what does he do instead? He goes
he,
AWOL
he joins the Hell's Angels.
in
So
London.
in London.
And not only that, it wasn't only him that went AWOL. It was John Nord
Yeah,
that
but
went with him, aka the Berserker.
right, but no, they didn't care
Nobody
about
cared about
nobody cared
that
about him.
because honestly, John Nord was never
Yeah,
even reprimanded when he got back. But then again,
right.
nothing was ever done with that character anyway. So the
So
two of them just go on an AWOL trip, just miss their flights. They're
yeah,
going. Nobody knows what's going on
they
here.
left Animal holding the bag.
Yeah. So what did they do? Crush filled in, and if a lot of people don't know this, the Kona Crush, who just started the gimmick, now is being packaged as part of the Legion of Doom
A lot,
to finish out
ironic,
the house shows.
which is ironic because he was a former member of
Exactly. He just
Demolition.
finished up feuding with them with
Wow.
Demolition, and
So he could
now
say he was part of Demolition and the
he's
Legion
part
of
of
Doom,
both. He's
right?
the first guy ever to be
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
both.
Isn't that something?
And they're just repackaged him as Crush, and it's just starting to click. But now he's got to help Animal finish out the house shows in Europe after SummerSlam as part of the Legion of Doom. But when they got back from London, Animal finished his obligated dates, and by this point, still nobody knows what's going on with Hawk, and Animal just left. It's just like I had it, he had it, we all had it. LOG was
Yeah.
gone shortly. I believe in September of '92 they were gone when they got back from the
Yeah.
States, and it was just sad that their WWE run ended like this. But it wasn't politics. It wasn't anything. It was one guy. It was Hawk
It was Hawk self-destructive.
battling his demons. He was self-destructive,
Yeah.
and we see that later on in their second run in WWE. And they actually kind of used it as a storyline at one point.
Yeah, which was not good.
But in any event, we'll fast forward 5 years. They had gone to WCW back again on a brief run.
They had a cup of coffee. They had a cup of coffee.
Literally.
They
A
stopped
cup
in.
of coffee.
They had the blue.
Yeah.
They came out with the blue shoulder pads.
They feuded with Sting and Luger.
Right, for the titles, I think,
Beginning of
right?
'96, yeah, and that was when they were starting the turn for Luger to be heel again before the whole NWO thing started, because he didn't want to get in the ring with them, and so
I remember watching that on Nitro. I remember started on a Nitro.
the match at Super Brawl and even the matches on Nitro were pretty good with the Road Warriors against Sting and Luger, but they were only there for 6 months. Because now Bischoff denies this to this day, and this is coming from the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors themselves. Now, take it for a grain of salt if you want to believe it or not. They claim that they were promised to be the second highest paid talent on the roster, and that as well as a separate contract that they'd be allowed to go back and forth to Japan, like they had
originally prior, yeah.
Yeah. Now, no other tag team would be paid more than them on the thing, which, okay, in the beginning of '96, if this happened, so be it. But obviously, it wasn't going to stand. But considering what Hall and Nash, nobody was to be paid higher than them. And if somebody else came in, they would jump. They would bump.
But not only that, the Legion of Doom had already, aka Road Warriors, they had already lost the shine. The shine was off of them
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't
because they
at
were
the
gone for so long.
right. They were gone for so long. They were a little older. You know, they
I
weren't.
mean, I believe Hawk had a singles run in WCW
Yeah,
in
he
the
did a little.
early
He did a little
'90s.
work. Yeah.
Did a little work for the title, and then he's teamed with Sting on occasions, but it wasn't Animal there; it was just him.
Right. Right. Right.
But for the most part, they were off in Japan
Yeah.
doing their thing. And to this day, Bischoff will deny that the allegation of the contract that they were supposed to be paid. Again,
I
take
don't
it for
know
what it is.
because
It
Bischoff.
could it could be either way.
The thing with Bischoff is a lot of times he doesn't remember anything, so you can't. Who
Ironically,
knows? Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
any event, again, WCW's loss, especially at that point where WCW was gaining traction with getting a lot of the bigger names,
Yeah.
Hall, Nash, and all of those guys.
And back then, what did they have? The Harlem Heat. That was
As
like
far as their tag team division,
yeah,
besides the Outsiders who came in later, it was the
Harlem
Faces of
Heat.
Fear, Barbarian Ming, Harlem Heat, the Blue Bloods, which it was Steven Regal and I believe Dave Taylor. Oh no, it was Bobby Eaton. I'm sorry, it was Bobby
Yeah.
Eaton. At this point, they put him back in the tag team role, but that was pretty much. And then
They're
the Nasty
fairly
Boys
yeah.
and Public
They're
Enemy for a
Public
minute.
Enemy. Public Enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, which they were more respected there than they were in WWE.
Way
Because when they
way
got to
more.
WWE, that's a side story for another
That's
day. The
another. That's another.
Acolytes
Yeah. Yeah.
really taught them a lesson.
Hmm.
But in any event,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
that was pretty much their tag team division. It was mainly Harlem Heat, Nasty Boys, and then
they could
Road
have used
Warriors
them.
for a
They could.
couple.
They could have used
Oh,
them.
definitely.
Yeah. But
Especially against Hall and Nash.
yeah.
Imagine what kind of matches you would have got for the tag team
Hmm.
division. Especially now in '96 was the resurgence of the Steiners had returned
Hmm.
because the Steiners had gone off and done some independent stuff as well as ECW before returning in '96 to the WCW in the tag team division.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you could
So.
have had the LOD Steiner reuniting rivalry there.
Hmm.
But in any event, on February 24th, 1997, on Monday Night Raw, they came in and destroyed the Headbangers in a match, and
Yeah.
it ended in a count out.
Yeah.
But
They
they
didn't
came
even
in.
win the match. They didn't even
No,
win
they
the
didn't win the
match.
match. I think they were trying to establish themselves as the old Road
Right.
Warriors
That's what it
that
was.
everybody
That's what
loves with the brutality.
Right. Right. Right.
And anybody that gets in the ring with the Headbangers, the way they're dressed, you just want to kill them anyway.
Hmm.
I mean, they just came. They just give you that look like I want to beat the crap out of them.
Right. Right. Right.
But they came in with a force to make an impact
Hmm.
at a time that WWE wasn't getting much traction as Nitro was. And this was during the NWO time as well, during that 84-week streak.
Hmm.
So now they go to WrestleMania 13 in their hometown of Chicago, Illinois. They have the Chicago Street Fight. They team with Ahmed Johnson, and they put him in his gear too, which was kind of cool.
That was
Against
a
Nation
really good fight.
Domination.
That was a really good match.
It was.
I enjoyed it, the Chicago Street Fight.
Wasn't that the one that Jerry Lawler said they're using everything but the kitchen sink, and then out pops the kitchen sink?
They were working very stiff. They were hitting each other for real. If you watch that match,
there could be some heat there. If you notice, it was mainly Crush that was getting it from Hawk.
Yeah, and Ahmed was hitting
and I'm wondering if that had to do with the whole '92 thing. I mean, that's just speculation.
But that
But yeah, it really looked like this was an actual fight.
The funny thing is the Road Warriors are originally from Minnesota. They're not from Chicago.
But they're billed from Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, it helps the city every time they get there.
Yeah, so whatever. But
they're part of the famous Minnesota crew that everybody came out of there. But in any event, they're billed out of Chicago, just like the Undertaker was billed out of Death Valley. He's from Houston, so
wow, yeah.
Character-wise, Chicago. Yeah. So they won the street fight, which is one of the rare times that Ahmed Johnson got a win against the Nation of Domination in that huge year-long debacle. I mean, that just ruined his career. But in any event,
and supposedly he stole the shoulder pads. Depending on whose story well, this animal accused him of stealing the shoulder pads.
The ones they gave him for the match?
Yeah. He maybe
he thought they were his.
Ahmed Johnson said that Hawk gifted it to him.
And
Animal says that he stole it, so who the hell knows? But, so.
If I'm Ahmed Johnson, I'm thinking you gave these to me. Thank you. I'm an honorary Road Warrior.
Right.
I didn't know I was leasing them. Whatever. But in any event, that got them moved up. We remember they were involved in the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah, that's right.
The whole Hart Foundation versus Austin, LOD, Shamrock, and Goldust.
Yes.
And that match
what the hell was Goldust doing in there?
Of everybody that was in that match, please everybody tell me the one that stands out that doesn't belong here.
Right. Like you
It's
had
but Goldust was feuding with Brian Pillman at the time
I
because of
know,
those
but
evening gown things. But again,
you had such a
this
squad
five
of
on
like
five,
killers, right? You had like a squad of killers.
if anything, it should have been Vader
Right.
because Vader eventually was feuding with them. But they could have turned him fan favorite because his career was starting to downgrade anyway. But of anybody that should have been in there, I think Vader should have been in the match
Yeah.
against the Hearts. But you knew that Austin and his crew, number one, were going to be booed, and number two,
Oh
they were
yeah,
going to
yeah.
take the loss because
Yeah.
they were in Calgary.
Hmm.
And I mean, the ovation alone that the Hart Foundation got
Yeah, it
was
was
just
wild.
amazing.
Yeah.
And the Legion of Doom, they all came off as heels, even though we know they're not. But
Right,
because they're
yeah.
in Canada, it is what it
Makes
is.
sense, yeah.
Yeah. And again, Goldust was just the one that, yeah.
Right,
No,
right, right.
what are you doing here? But again, he had the feud with Brian Pillman,
Yeah,
so
so
that kind
yeah.
of put him in there. And by that point, Goldust was almost on the downward spiral anyway of they were re-gimmicking him anyway as
Right,
the
right.
artist formerly known as Goldust.
Oh Jesus.
So now with the traction that they've gotten, come October, they've won their second. They win their second tag team championship against the Godwins. Now I don't know if this is the one that they broke Phineas's neck or was Henry's neck
I
when
don't
they did the
know.
Doomsday device and he landed
Uh-huh.
on his head and he actually broke his neck. I think this was the match because he landed on his head. I think it was Phineas.
That he
In
got
all
hurt.
honesty, yeah. And they when the Godwins came final. No, I'm sorry, it was Henry Godwin that it happened to. And when they came back, it was a personal vendetta that they had, and they actually threw a couple of punches that stuck. If anybody's caught the Monday Night Raw matches when it happened in '98. But in any event, the Godwins lose the tag team titles to the Legion of Doom. Legion of Doom is back on top. However, I believe this was their just desert for doing this demolition. Now you've got two guys that never teamed really together. They kind of just threw them together. I don't think WWE knew that this was going to take off. It was Jesse James and Billy Gunn, two guys that were in the singles roles. Remember, Jesse James was on his own after he leaves being the roadie from
Hmm.
Jeff Jarrett. Billy Gunn, the Smoking Guns are over and done with. They tried remember Honky Tonk Man was his manager. They tried the Rockabilly,
Yeah.
which was god awful, almost like making Too Cold Scorpio Flash Funk. I mean, it's just and Al Snow Leaf Cassidy. It's just not working in 1997. So now the Billy Gunn and Jesse James are having a series of matches together before all of a sudden they realize, hey, we should be putting these two guys together. So now they form them together. They're not even dressed together. They didn't even have their name yet. But it was shortly afterwards that they were called the New Age Outlaws. And um, what what's funny about that is they lost the titles a month later to them, a team just put together.
Yeah.
And not only losing the
Not only
tag
that.
titles, but they were humiliated
Yeah.
night in and night out. And I remember personally, I went to a house show at the Garden in 1997. This was a great match, but they were pretty much made to look like fools in the match. It was The Undertaker and the Legion of Doom versus Triple H. Oh, sorry, Shawn Michaels and the New Age Outlaws. Triple H was on the crutches at the time, and it was in a steel cage. And this match tore the house down. I remember I lost my voice during this match, but every time the Outlaws got a hold of the Legion of Doom, they made them look bad. And I don't understand why. If it was to get them over, okay, but to the extent they went to, it kind of embarrassed them.
No, I really did. I mean, a group like that, why would you do that? Why would you do
Especially shaving Hawk's hair. They put countless times that
that? That
DX,
was
and at this point, you thought they were part of DX, and they were going to put them in with Shawn Michaels and Triple
right.
H, but Vince felt that even Shawn agreed that they were better on their own doing their thing and us doing ours. They didn't need the push at this point.
Right.
Doing this kind of gave it to them, and all four of them remember throwing the Legion of Doom through the tables, and it was just one embarrassment after another.
I hated
And
seeing that.
I really did
I
too,
hated seeing
especially you just put the belts back on them, and a
Mhm.
month later you took them off of them, and now we're going into 1998. They're feuding with them. The Royal Rumble, they had their match with them. They don't come out victorious against the Outlaws, and uh, it was actually February 23rd. They lost. They had won the titles back after the Rumble. They won the titles back, but but if you remember during the match, um, Hawk's early celebration it distracted the ref, and the Outlaws capitalized that. They had the match won, and Hawk coming in immediately celebrating, and the referee saying, "Hey, get out of the ring."
Yeah.
The Outlaws were able to capitalize it, and their third reign, what should have been their third reign, got reversed. The Outlaws kept the titles, and now the Road Warriors are fighting in the ring against each other. This disbanded the team. This was the breakup. And now, as a fan, you think, "Oh, hey, WrestleMania is Hawk going to face Animal?"
Right.
Because now Vince has broken them up, and for whatever reason, I mean, I didn't like it. I really didn't like what I saw next on March 29th, 1998, in what I believe was one of the best WrestleManias, considering the main event. We'll get to that in WrestleMania 14. What they did to the Legion of Doom. Not only did you change the name, change the outfit, change their look, you gave them a manager.
Yep.
That you gave them Sonny.
Sonny, yeah.
Who called them LOD 2000.
Yeah. Who Sonny at that time was on fire, but Sonny had no business being.
She only was on fire because she would go and manage the team that was now the current tag team champions. She jumped to the Smoking Guns. She was with the Body Donners. She tried to be with the Godwins. I mean, she was just jumping, and now she's the manager. Now, granted, the outfit looked great on her.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll at least give them. But you changed the music. You changed the look. Now they're coming out in bicycle helmets.
Yeah.
You got Hawk. You got Animal in shorts, or Hawk rather.
Yeah, they try to repackage them.
Exactly, and you just legendary tag team like that.
How is a girl gonna control these two wild beasts? Like, it didn't make any sense.
But in any event, they go to WrestleMania, and they return at WrestleMania 14 as a surprise late entrant into this battle royal to determine the future number one contenders for the tag titles. And they won this title shot, and they got the title shot, but they never won the titles. Right. Now, by this point, they're still having their self-destructive mode. And Sonny left that shortly after because she was having her own issues in WWE.
Yeah, she ends up getting canned, right? I think.
Yeah, and she eventually goes back to ECW, where her husband had gone, Chris Candido.
And she had a cup of coffee in WCW too.
Actually, I don't even think she finished the cup. I don't even think they gave it to her before she left. It was that quick.
Yeah.
And so now they've introduced Droz into it.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Now we're just going from bad to worse.
I don't know who's Crush or Droz.
Droz,
yeah.
I mean, the whole puke thing didn't work, so then they called him Darren Droz. That didn't work. Now they're calling him the Droz. That's not working. So what do? Let's put him in the Legion of Doom.
Yeah, and he was like
because of the whole thing with Hawk.
He was like an insurance policy because Hawk was,
Yeah, well, he and remember at the time what made it even worse was Paul Ellering had come back, but it was to manage the Disciples of Apocalypse.
Yeah,
so now he's going up. Now he's going up against them.
And
they had a couple of 6-man tag house shows where it was the DOA, because this was when DOA now was strictly just Skull and 8-Ball, aka Brian Lee and what was the other guy's name? No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Brian Lee. It was the Harris brothers.
Yeah.
Brian Lee and Crush were the other two members, and at this point they were gone. So DOA was down to from 4 guys to 2. It was the Harris brothers, known in WCW, and Paul Ellering was their tag team partner against Droz and the Legion of Doom. And even then, that didn't go well because now Hawk is being yelled at by Droz, who thinks he's part of the team.
Right.
And really, I saw the phase out process with.
Yeah, you can see it.
With Hawk. And actually, what was funny is shortly after that, they deemed Hawk unfit, and now Droz is literally part of the Legion of Doom. So now it's Droz and Animal, which doesn't click. They're still doing the LOD 2000 music, but they got the old shoulder pads on.
Mm-hmm.
Droz just looks like a buffoon in the outfit. I mean, it's just not working at all, and nobody's telling Vince that, hey, you're winning the ratings, yes, but it's this thing what you're doing is not working. But I really don't know if it mattered to him or what. But in any event, You remember they used the real life angle of Hawk's alcohol and drug
Alcohol
problems.
problems, yeah. Yeah,
They did the storyline where he climbed the Titantron.
I don't know why they do that, man. It's such in poor taste. You know, WCW did the same thing with Scott Hall when Scott Hall was having a lot of troubles with alcohol and stuff like that, substance abuse. They did the same thing, and it's just I don't you don't certain things you
They did it with Jake Roberts too, with the whole alcohol thing when he came back in 1996.
yeah, but at least
They
they turned it
brought the
into a
real life.
positive. But they turned it into a positive that he found
They
religion and
Yeah, and then they did the storyline with Jerry Lawler
yeah,
and
but
that whole shtick. But Scott Hall, I think, several times came out was intoxicated because that episode where he vomited, that was for real.
yeah, but
But I don't agree with bringing your personal stuff
nah,
into
that's
it.
too close, and they even these guys didn't like it.
No, because they
They didn't like it.
shortly after the fake suicide thing with the
Oh
going on
God,
top of the Titantron,
how bad was the
that was
Titantron?
awful.
I remember watching this live and
Yeah,
just like shaking my head.
I can't believe I'm witnessing this.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, both guys viewed they were strongly objective again into this, and quickly I think shortly after that they finally dropped the gimmick because I really don't know where they were going with this angle.
I don't think they knew.
No, and thank God we didn't find out
Yeah.
because to be quite honest, it was dropped.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people, as 1998 is now coming to an end, LOD was starting to become the heels
That was probably
again.
so.
But yeah, and they were the opening match to a lot of house shows, not so
Yeah.
much the pay-per-views, but for the most part of 1998, it was just Legion of Doom and DOA feuding, and they were being phased out, and a lot of people didn't know that they were in the WWE through 1999,
Right. Yeah.
and
You wouldn't even know. You
they
wouldn't even
did
know.
make a brief return. They took some time off in the fall of '98, and they came back. It was actually March 22nd of '99, an episode of Raw, and they attacked Patterson and Briscoe, the Stooges at
Yeah.
that point. And it was actually in a backstage skit. If you remember, the two were trying to impersonate the Legion of Doom.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And again, back then they were doing a lot of that because if you remember, they would come out to Hulk Hogan's Real American theme that year. And it was kind of like a slap in the face to Hogan.
Yeah.
And these two were their name says, they were Stooges.
Pretty much.
And they were attacked. And the LOD actually they impersonated the Legion of Doom in a handicap match against with Shane McMahon involved as well on the week prior.
Mm-hmm.
So they impersonated him the week prior, and then they were attacked when in their return.
Mm.
But again, that was a cup of coffee. Like some people, if you watched Monday Night Raw religiously back then, you know that they made their return for whatever brief time it was. Matter of fact, they were even in the WrestleMania 15 free for all pre-show match, the Battle Royal, in which the last two guys in the ring would be granted a tag title shot, which became D'Lo Brown and Test. Hawk and Animal were eliminated in that match. And a lot of people, again, if you didn't see the free for all, if you just watch WrestleMania, you don't realize that the Legion of Doom were there for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe it was, what was it? It was actually 2 weeks after WrestleMania that they received a tag title shot between Owen and Bulldog on Monday Night Raw, and they lost that match, and it wasn't even a long one. And that was pretty much their farewell. That was their final match, and they were just done in WWE. And so both runs did not end well.
Well,
And
they did have that one night in 2003 where they came back on Monday Night Raw. One match. It could have been like a trial, a test run to see if they still had it, and they came out
a third comeback.
Yeah, and they fought Kane and Rob Van Dam,
the World Tag Team Champions at the
right,
time.
right. And I remember seeing this. I still have a vivid memory of seeing this, and I was like, the fan in me was excited, even though I knew they were older, and they had their problems. You could see they weren't in the same shape.
They still could have offered something because at this point now they had the brand split, and the tag team division was weak to me on Monday Night Raw, and so I mean they could have offered something to it. And
you know what it is though? It's with LOD. It's kind of for me. It's like I want to see them dominate, or I don't want to see them at all.
This is true.
I can't see an LOD like putting.
I can't see another run where what you did to them with like the Outlaws.
Yeah. So
and if they would have done this,
right?
And who's to say? At that point with 3-minute warning, what would have happened? I think by that point they were done.
Yeah, so it was a one
but
night. It was
but
nice to see
it
them.
was
And
it was a one and done, and it didn't work out, and they didn't
yeah,
get the thing. And the sad thing is that on October 19th, 2003, Hawk passed, and that hit a lot of wrestling fans hard, and especially last year when we lost Animal, and
yeah,
that was actually September 22nd, 2020. We lost Hawk too soon, and
yeah.
Animal, it was a shame. And a lot of people don't know. If you do know this, great. John Laurinaitis was his brother.
That's right.
They were the Laurinaitis family. John Laurinaitis was people power in the WWE, but prior to that, he had a WCW run where he was part of the Dynamic Dudes with Shane Douglas, and then also, he had a match with Mean Mark, who eventually became the Undertaker. So his career
Wasn't
didn't
he?
take off, but I
Was he?
mean, he was Animal's brother.
Was he part of Well Done or one of those groups? Or am I thinking about somebody else?
That's somebody else.
Lauren,
I
I
think,
feel like
but
Lauren.
Laurinaitis by that point was done. His
Yeah.
career was
Okay.
over.
He got injured, I
But
think, something like that. Something.
yeah, and plus he was nowhere as good as his brother. But
No, no, no.
he was his brother nonetheless.
But he was an
And
office guy.
Lauren,
He worked in the office and stuff.
yeah, he was better behind the scenes with Vince McMahon, and now recently Vince just brought him back to be head of talent
No,
relations and stuff, and we'll see how that goes. First time
not
it
sure if
didn't
that,
go
I'm
any
not sure if
well.
that's a good thing, but okay. He's the one that I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I think he's
Yeah,
the one that ratted out. Damn, who did he rat out? Was it Russo that he ratted out to the office? He ratted out somebody to the
it
office.
wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, he
It
ratted out
really wouldn't
somebody to
surprise
the
me.
office. I forgot who it
But in any event,
was.
yeah, we lost these guys too soon. And I remember when the Legion of Doom was inducted in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Animal came out, and I think Paul Ellering was there, and
Yes.
they had the Hawk action figure, and it was kind of sad
Yeah.
to see, because again we lost them too soon, and who's to say if they could have gotten that run, what they could have done. I'm not even going to bring up Legion of Doom 2005 because that really has nothing to do
Mhm.
with this Animal and Heidenreich. I mean, that's just the legacy was being tarnished with that,
Okay, man.
in my opinion. But because Animal was trying to do a singles run, and they thought, hey, why not do another version of a Legion of Doom?
Yeah.
And I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest tag teams, if not the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Just unfortunate demons that Hawk possessed, and just the way they went out both times. Just it was sad.
It was sad. Yeah, I mean, but if you look at their body of work, I think there's probably nobody more accomplished in terms of tag team than them
They, they,
because
they've won it everywhere.
they won everywhere they went. New Japan, WCW/NWA, WWE.
WWE.
You know.
They're one of a handful of tag teams. I believe the Steiners also and the Dudleys have also fit that accomplishment as well, especially the Steiners. So only a handful of teams have done what the Legion of Doom have done,
Hmm.
but they were the first to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were unique when they first came out. Their look and everything was just captivating.
It was one
And
of a kind.
yeah, at the time, then everyone kind of like took little things from them. But the shame of their career, though, for me, the WWE run at least, and we talked about this in our demolition video, but I feel like it's relevant. We should bring it up. Is that they could have had one of the all-time greatest rivalries, if they had it done done it
Yes,
the
if it
right
was
way with
done right.
demolition. If it was done the right way with demolition and WWE, and had they kept these two tag teams apart and built it up, you know, that could have been tremendous. That could have been a WrestleMania.
WrestleMania 7 could have
Yeah.
been their match, and then LOD should still get the tag title match, because if you do LOD and Demolition, then the other match everybody wants to see is the Rockers and the Heart Foundation.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you do that match for the tag titles, and even if the Rockers say win the tag team titles from Hearts, which I think could have and should have happened at that point, even if the Rockers hold it till SummerSlam and the Legion of Doom beat them, again, you've got another great match. And the Nasty Boys weren't, as to me, as accomplished at that point as these other tag teams were.
Right.
Yeah, they had a good WCW run and they were the tag champions, but I mean, not as known as these guys. And I just don't think they fit the bill during that time frame with these teams. And if you do it that way, I think it runs better. And LOD still then comes out the tag team champions.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like that was kind of like a blown opportunity.
They blew a huge rivalry with Demolition, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because all we really got was the Survivor Series
And a few house shows.
and the house shows. They threw Ultimate Warrior in there
Yeah.
against Axe Smash and Crush. It was Legion of Doom and Ultimate Warrior. Those
Yep.
matches weren't the greatest because it was basically Warrior and Legion of Doom squashing
Yeah.
Demolition. So
until Axe had his farewell, and then it was Smash and Crush, and then it
right,
was back to the Legion of Doom,
right.
burying them on house shows.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that they missed out on that, and their WWE run was kind of short, because of Hawk and his problems,
Both
But
times, yeah.
yeah,
Because
so
if they could have from 1990, I mean, you could have made a career all the way through 98. Imagine them, in the tag team division as weak as it was even in 94, 95.
oh yeah,
I mean, the rivalries they could have
they
had
could,
and what they
yeah,
could have done.
absolutely, absolutely. Imagine if the Legion of Doom had gotten there in the '80s.
Oh my!
Imagine
I
that.
mean, if they were there around at the same time as Demolition at their peak and the Powers of Pain doing what they're doing,
Heart
imagine
Foundation,
Heart
Rougeau,
Foundation, yes, the Strike Force, the
yep,
Rockers, the plethora of tag teams that they had back then. It was
yeah,
just
they
it
could
seemed
have.
like WCW, WWE had it was the epitome of tag team wrestling over the course of '88 through 1990,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just started to decline from there.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
imagine the matches you could have had. Imagine if they were involved in that Survivor Series
yep,
match.
yeah, definitely.
What could have been?
Yeah, but I mean, all in all, they still had a great career. One of the greatest.
They did. They're Hall of
Yeah,
Famers, hands down. They've accomplished a lot. They were great in the ring, but it's just unfortunate with Hawk. That's all.
yeah, yeah. All right, so that's the Legion of Doom slash the Road Warriors. Let us know what you think. Your memories of them. What do you think about their careers? Any missed opportunities, or you just think their career was great the way that it was?
Our upcoming episode after this we'll be starting a 3-part series on the Ultimate Warrior.
All right, that's one you guys want to look out for. So
Oh
please,
yeah, because there's a lot going on
yeah,
there,
there's a
which is
lot.
why we broke it up into 3 episodes,
Yeah,
and you'll tune in and you'll see why.
absolutely. All right, so you guys make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.
Take care, guys.